Conservatism is the inclination in politics to stay traditional. Ronald Reagan once quoted, "Government is not the solution to our problem. Government is the problem." Ever since Senator Barry Goldwater ran for president in 1964, conservatives argued that state governments, businesses, and individuals needed more freedom from the heavy hand of Washington, D.C.
As the 1970s approached, right-wing grassroots groups emerged to promote issues that reflected their interests. They became known as the New Right. They focused their energy on controversial social issues, such as opposing abortion, blocking the Equal Rights Amendment, and evading court-ordering busing. Many people in the New Right criticized the policy of affirmative action. The affirmative action is when employers and educational institutions give special consideration to women, African Americans, and other minority groups, even though these people were not necessarily better qualified.
Many conservatives thought that the affirmative action was a form of reverse discrimination. This meant that they thought a group was favored because of its race or gender. Beginning in the mid-1960s, the conservative movement grew a huge deal in the United States. Conservative groups formed something called Conservative Coalition. It was an alliance of business leaders, middle-class voters, disaffected Democrats, and the fundamental Christian groups.
A major religious revival, especially evangelical Christianity, strengthened the Conservative Coalition. Two of the most influential televangelists were Jerry Falwell and Pat Robertson. Moral Majority, an evangelical and fundamentalist Christian organization, was formed by Falwell. This group translated the Bible from its original text into literal words.
In 1976, Ronald Reagan lost the Republican nomination to Gerald Ford. After 4 years, he won the nomination and chose George H. Bush as his running mate. Ronald Reagan became a new conservative Republican during the 1950s. He claimed that he never left the Democratic Party, that the party had left him instead. He was a spokesperson for General Electric and toured the entire country making speeches of free enterprise against the government. In 1966, he was elected governor of California, and in 1970, he was reelected.
Reagan ran on a number of key issues. Supreme Court decisions on abortion, pornography, the teaching of evolution, and prayer in public schools all concerned conservative workers, and they informed Ronald Reagan about these issues. Thanks to his acting career and his wide variety of experience in the public eye, he was a very easy candidate. He was relaxed and charming. From a quote he stated, "A recession is when your neighbor loses his job. A depression is when you lose yours. And recovery is when Jimmy Carter loses his."
Those who would trade our freedom for the soup kitchen of the welfare state have told us they have a utopian solution of peace without victory. They call their policy accommodation. And they say if we'll only avoid any direct confrontation with the enemy, he'll forget his evil ways and learn to love us. All who oppose them are indicted as warmongers. They say we offer simple answers to complex problems. Well, perhaps there is a simple answer. Not an easy answer, but simple. If you and I have the courage to tell our elected officials that we want our national policy based on what we know in our hearts is morally right, we cannot buy our security, our freedom from the threat of the bomb, by committing an immorality so great as saying to 1 billion human beings now enslaved behind the Iron Curtain, give up your dreams of freedom, because to save our own skins, we're willing to make a deal with your slave masters. Alexander Hamilton said a nation which can prefer disgrace to danger is prepared for a master and deserves one. Now let's set the record straight. There's no argument over the choice between peace and war, but there's only one guaranteed way you can have peace, and you can have it in the next second: surrender. Admittedly, there's a risk in any course we follow other than this, but every lesson of history tells us that the greater risk lies in appeasement. And this is the specter our well-meaning liberal friends refuse to face, that their policy of accommodation is appeasement. And it gives no choice between peace and war, only between fight or surrender. If we continue to accommodate, continue to back and retreat, eventually we have to face the final demand, the ultimatum. And what then? Well, Nikita Khrushchev has told his people he knows what our answer will be. He has told them that we're retreating under the pressure of the Cold War, and someday When the time comes to deliver the final ultimatum, our surrender will be voluntary, because by that time, we will have been weakened from within spiritually, morally, and economically.
He was known as the Great Communicator. His commitment to military and economic strength appealed to many Americans as well. It was apparent by 1984 that Reagan had created a large group of people who highly approved his policies. These voters included business people who wanted to deregulate the economy, Southerners who welcomed the limits on federal power, Westerners who resented federal controls on mining and grazing, Reagan Democrats who agreed with Reagan on limiting federal government and thought that the Democratic Party had drifted too far to the left.
The conservative movement marked an important part in American history. Not only did it change our government, but it created a stable nation as a whole.